Good afternoon to all the participants of this particular session brought by Catalyst. So today we're going to talk about teaching as leadership. So I would like to welcome everyone to this particular seminar, and I hope you're doing well. I know that you are in the thick of preparations for the coming school year, and I am sure that the seminars that were conducted a few days ago by Catalyst and the seminar for today, including the seminars for the coming days, will really help you prepare. Uh, I, the, I am Ernie Grillo. I will talk about teaching as leadership, and to basically introduce myself, I would like to begin with the fact that I have been teaching for many years now. So I have taught in the elementary school, in high school, but now I'm connected with the School of Education and Human Development of the University of Asia and the Pacific. So I teach college students, and then I teach graduate school students. And I would have welcomed the opportunity to see you in person. But I know that right now, because of this particular situation that we are in, we really have to look at the platform, this particular platform, as a means of communicating very important ideas about teaching, about learning, about education in general. And this is one of them, none other than teaching as leadership. So I would like to begin by mentioning very important ideas for teachers. These ideas are very close to our heart because when we encounter these words, these ideas, they ring a bell. They ring a bell precisely because they are important to us. They are important to the parents and they are important to our students. So when we think about teaching as leadership, we have to start thinking about improvement. The improvement of the curriculum. Uh, I think probably a few weeks ago, there was a talk, there was an issue regarding improving the current curriculum because we will again have another school year wherein we will use blended learning or online learning. And I know that when we talk about improving the curriculum, particularly improving the quality of teaching, this is important to everyone in this particular session. Another area or idea that we have to think about when we see the word teaching as leadership or see the words teaching as leadership is none other than the learning, the continuous learning of the teacher. Because when we talk about the school, when we talk about learning on the part of the students, that learning will not progress unless there's a good teacher. And the good teacher has to continually update himself or herself. Just like what you are doing right now with this particular seminar that you are attending or with the seminars that you have attended brought to you by Catalyst. Another idea is professional development in general. It is our development, whether we talk about graduate schooling, whether we talk about attending sessions or working with our teachers. Because definitely, when we say the teacher as a leader or teaching as leadership, this particular idea will have to hug the limelight. Another idea is instructional leadership because teaching as leadership or the teacher as a leader is also connected to what we call instructional leadership. And here, probably we are thinking, but I am not an instructional leader. My principal is an instructional leader. My subject head or the department head or the level coordinator probably is an instructional leader, but I am not one. But later on, we would realize that when we talk about teaching as leadership, we have to talk about instructional leadership because I would argue later on that this is one of the core functions of teaching as leadership. That even though we are not in a position of authority, we do not occupy a formal position of authority, we are still instructional leaders. And the biggest and most important idea that we need to think about is learning, because we are concerned about our students, whether we are science teachers, social studies teachers, we're concerned about the development of our students, whether that particular development is understanding the content, or as important as understanding the content is growing in values, growing the character of the student. So these are five important points. And of course, the last one is probably the most important point when we start thinking about teaching as leadership. Because when we talk about teaching as leadership, and then we talk about professional development, we talk about teacher learning, instructional leadership, then we talk about student learning, everything can be facilitated by an important person in the school, none other than you, none other than you. When I say you, because I know that you aim to become a good teacher, a clear manifestation of that particular goal of wanting to become a good teacher is none other than attending this particular seminar, right? And I know that right now, in case you are a principal or, for example, a subject head, later on, probably 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will have to go back to the classroom. And here, this very important idea of teacher leadership will have to come out again. So I would like now to clearly point out that when we talk about teaching as leadership, then we have to talk about the idea of the teacher as a leader, the teacher leader or teacher leadership, which is the focus of this particular session. So here you can clearly see in the screen as a teaser, some sort of an introduction regarding the importance of this particular subject, that the teacher leader is a good teacher. Because when we talk about a good teacher, that particular teacher is an accomplished teacher. And we all know that when someone is a good teacher, right, we make a difference in the learning of our students. And as important as that, we make a difference in the learning of our colleagues, right? Then we have the desire to stay in the school where we teach. And more importantly, the desire to stay in the profession. So that's some sort of a teaser, because I know that what attracted you, what attracted everyone to the profession of teaching is not necessarily the salary, not necessarily a life wherein you can probably buy a very a house in exclusive village. You can buy a comfortable house, or you can probably buy a car, but that particular car is something that is according to your means, etc. What is important here is that we entered the profession because it is a vocation for us, because we want to make a difference in the lives of other people. And clearly, if we want to stay in the profession because it is our vocation, the other point that we need to cultivate is not only to improve ourselves as teachers, but at the same time to go beyond ourselves. Because clearly, the research findings tell us that when a teacher goes beyond himself, when he contributes to the development of his colleagues, to his co-teachers, whether in the school unit, in the department, or in the entire school, there is a bigger chance for that particular teacher to stay as a teacher for many more years, right? So some sort of a teaser. So today then, we're going to take a look at what is a teacher leader. And the assumption, and it is a good assumption, is that everyone here can be a teacher leader. Then we'll take a look at why is it important to have teacher leaders in the school. Because when we talk about leadership in the schools, we cannot just rely on the principal. No matter how good the principal is, especially when we talk about 21st century learning, 21st century teaching, 21st century issues and dilemmas, right? The principal cannot do it alone, or the subject head, no matter how good he is or she is, cannot do it alone. And therefore, we have to take a look at the reason why the teacher leader is important. That even though he does not occupy a position of authority, the person in authority is probably more important than the position in authority. And of course, the third question is probably the most important, because how can I become a teacher leader? So this particular session then is also an aspiration. We take a look at a goal that could be realized probably in a couple of years, probably in 3 years, probably in 5 years. But we have to begin today. We have to begin tomorrow, right? Especially tomorrow when we start reflecting, and on Monday when we start again talking to our colleagues, talking to our department head, or if you are the principal, talking to the teachers who are under you, whom you supervise. So the what, the why, and probably the most important is the how. The most important is the how. Because the verdict looks promising. Let's focus, for example, on teacher professional development. And what you are doing right now is a clear indication of the importance of professional development. You all know that the teacher has to continually learn, that the teacher, you, is a lifelong learner. Yes, we need to take a look at the fact that we have to renew our license, that we have to earn some credits in order for us to be able to go to PRC and renew our license, because we have sat in, let us say, 15 hours or 30 hours of professional development sessions. But I think we all know that it is far more important than renewing the license. There is an inner drive on the part of a teacher to improve himself, whether that particular improvement is in the area of classroom management, whether in the area of teaching methods and strategies, or in the session that I conducted for Catalyst regarding engaging the learner or engaging our students. So it is a far deeper reason than renewing the license, no matter how important the license is. And just like what I said a while ago, your presence in this particular seminar, not only on attendance, because I know that you are reflecting, you're reviewing, you're even rethinking so many of the ideas, is a clear indication of the importance of professional development. But there is a connection also between professional development and the teacher leader, most especially in the context of the in-service training seminar. The seminars that are conducted in school. The seminars that, even if, let us say, experts come to the school, or let us say a seminar wherein it is facilitated by a co-teacher, by a colleague, the research also is very clear because it tells us that when you talk about the professional development of teachers, particularly in service training, there's a connection between professional development and the teacher leader. Yes, the principal did plan the seminar. The subject head did invite the speaker. The principal did choose the speaker, or probably the subject head did form a team in order to come up with that particular seminar. But in the end, such seminar is facilitated, is made successful by teachers who actively participate, whether that session is a lecture, when they ask questions, when they give comments, whether that particular session is a focus group discussion, perhaps when they facilitate, when they lead, when that particular session is a demonstration teaching, perhaps when they take the center stage and develop and demonstrate certain micro skills, like for example, how do you make a student pay attention? Or for example, How do you make sure that a particular student stops talking, for example, by occupying the space or by looking at the student, etc.? Research is also clear. And I think our personal practical knowledge also attests to the fact that all of these professional development sessions become successful because of the presence of teachers who are active, and not only active because we listen to them. Why do we listen to them? Because they're competent, because they're credible, right? Why do we warm up to them? Why do we why do we go to that particular teacher, approach that particular teacher and ask questions, and not mindful of the fact that probably we are exposing ourselves that we don't know something about classroom management, about teaching methods? Does not matter because we look at that particular teacher and what comes into our mind is that this particular teacher is approachable, right? So here in this session then, we're talking about this particular teacher, a teacher who is competent, a teacher who is credible, a teacher who is approachable. And later on, we will also define who this particular teacher leader is, appreciate the key tasks of this particular teacher leader, right? And then try to see how we can aspire to be one. Because I think you may have already thought about someone, a specific teacher in your school, who could probably fit this particular description if we take a look at the characteristics. So this is the focus of this particular session. Teaching is leadership. And that particular leadership could be clearly seen in the teacher who does not occupy a formal position of authority, not a position in authority, but a person in authority. He commands respect because that particular person or teacher is a good teacher. He is competent, credible, and I think more importantly, because he is approachable. That's the teacher leader. So let's try to take a look at this particular activity. I'm going to give you a minute or two. Let's translate that. Okay. When was the last time you attended a professional development session in the school with a colleague or with your colleagues whom you are very familiar with? Probably that particular session was whole school, probably one department, one school unit, elementary school or grade school or high school or junior high school. And then what did you learn from your colleagues who attended that particular session? Because probably they were facilitators or they gave a very good comment about a certain event or answered a certain question, etc. Because right now we now have to imagine who these people are. And it's possible that right now we are referring to you because you are a teacher leader. Or if you have not yet reached that particular point, I am sure it is something that we can aspire for, that you can aspire for. All right? 1 minute. All right. So I hope you already have a name or names, because if you have several names, it means that your school is a good school. If we take a look at the 2007 McKinsey report, it tells us that the excellent school is determined by the excellent teachers. A school can only be as good as the teachers who teach in that particular school. And we all know that when we talk about a good school, there are many good teachers. And indeed, if you are able to list down several names, names of specific teachers, then I have a hunch that your school is a good school, right? So let's move on and let's now take a look at the big idea for this particular session. And the big idea is basically just like what I said, centered on the teacher leader. And this is, I can make, and I do make a difference, a big one, in the professional development of my co-teachers. I can help them improve because just like what you heard me a while ago, it is about a teacher who goes beyond himself, who goes beyond his own professional development, but looks after the professional development of the people around him, his colleagues, his co-teachers, even if he is not in a position of the principal or the subject head. He is a teacher who is not only concerned with the learning and development, whether that particular learning and development is in the area of understanding the content, growing in virtues and values, physical development, but he is also concerned with the development of the students who are in the other classes because he knows that when you talk about the school, you have to talk about all of the teachers. You have to be concerned about all of the teachers. You have to be concerned about all of the students. So this is the big idea. And remember when we entered the profession, we are concerned with the learning of our students. And perhaps something that was missing in that particular passion for teaching is a concern for the development of our own colleagues in the learning of our own co-teachers. And therefore, this is now a challenge for everyone to have some sort of a paradigm shift that when we talk about learning, we have to talk about student learning and we have to talk about the professional learning and development of our own colleagues. And we can make a big difference. So this is a momentous occasion, and we borrow these words from Mark Twain. The two most important days in our life or lives are the day when you are born and the day when you find out why. And this is an opportunity for me to push the envelope and try to make the teachers see the idea that teacher leadership is worth aspiring for. To become a teacher leader is worth aspiring for. Helping our colleagues learn and develop is worth aspiring for. We can add that particular goal to our philosophy of teaching, to our philosophy of education. It has to be as important as the goal of improving ourselves. Because when we talk about a good school, we cannot just talk about a single good teacher. We have to talk about a group of good teachers. All right? So, an opportunity and definitely a challenge to everyone because it is a part of the mission and vocation of the teacher. It is a part of the mission and vocation of the teacher. It's our vocare. It is our life. This is something that we have to seriously consider. In fact, the key word is reconsider because many times we have always been thinking about our own development. Okay, that's why we attend professional development sessions. But what about, for example, when we go back to our own school? What about giving a seminar to our fellow teachers, even without the principal asking us to do it? Because we are enthusiastic, very, very enthusiastic to share what we have learned. And because we know that when we share what we have learned, we know that our colleagues will improve, will probably get one or two good ideas in order to improve their teaching in certain key areas. And I would like to invite everyone then that when that this is basically what I call a paradigm shift because we're going beyond. It's not only about, I'm not only concerned about my own professional development, right? Because when we improve ourselves, we improve our teaching effectiveness, beginning with the way we manage the class, the way we plan the lesson, the way we implement the lesson, the way we engage our students. But when we talk about student achievement and we talk about student learning, student development, the research is very clear. The number one factor in student achievement SA is none other than the collective efficacy on the part of the faculty. And we all know that there is a connection between collective efficacy, collective teacher efficacy, and teaching effectiveness. The belief that you can, when you go inside the classroom, that you can do good teaching. The belief that when you go inside the classroom, that you can manage the class well. The belief that all of the students in that particular classroom can learn. This is teacher efficacy. And in the research of this particular person whom we see in this slide, John Hattie, the most important factor in the achievement of the student is the collective teacher efficacy. So we can clearly see, right, that even though we are a good teacher, that we make a difference in the learning of our students in the classrooms that we teach, there is a need for us to go beyond that isolation, to go beyond our classroom, and to be able to contribute to the effectiveness of the other teachers, our colleagues in the other classrooms, right? Because clearly, it takes a group of good teachers to be able to push forward the idea of learning on the part of the students in the entire school. And the number is very high, 1.57. When you talk about zero point 0.8, that's already high. But here you're talking about 1.57, right? And the argument is none other than when we talk about the professional development of teachers in the school, it cannot be the work of the principal alone. It cannot be the work of the subject head alone or the school officers alone. Because definitely, most of the time, it will fail. We need teacher leaders. And precisely, this is the reason why the title of the module is Teaching as Leadership. How do you push forward the idea of teacher professional development, right? How do you maximize it? And you need teacher leaders. So we cannot be parochial in our thinking. We have to go beyond ourselves. We have to take a look at the grade level, grade 5, multiple subjects, grade 7, grade 11 in the senior high school, or the subject area, whether that subject area is in the elementary school or the grade school, or probably even covering all of the grades, or even probably the entire school unit, and the middle school, the junior high school, the senior high school. So it's going beyond ourselves, going beyond looking at our own teaching. And of course, we also realize that when we think about teacher leadership, when we think about the teacher leader, then we have to be good teachers. And that's the reason why I said a while ago, this is a this is a good beginning, a good starting point, because you are very serious in your goal of improving yourself, because we cannot have a teacher leader if that particular teacher leader is not capable, is not competent, is not respected, right? He has to be a good teacher. He has to be a good teacher. So the essential question that we need to answer for this particular session is, how do I lead student learning focusing on promoting my colleagues' professional development, my co-teachers' professional development, because this is the key job of the teacher leader. Number one, he is not paid for it. He does not receive an allowance, but never mind. That's not important to him. Number two, he does not have a title, like the title of a principal, an assistant principal, a coordinator. But it's all right. Never mind, it's not important to him. What is important to him is none other than I have something that I can share with my colleagues. I am a good teacher, right? I am competent. I have the knowledge and skills of a good teacher. I am respected, looked up to by my colleagues, and therefore they will listen to me, right? So this is the essential question: how do I lead? And that's the reason why a while ago, if I remember, we were talking about what, why, and then how. So the big idea that I have proposed a while ago is I can make a difference in the professional development of my colleagues. I can go beyond myself. I have to go beyond myself precisely because of the reasons that I have stated a while ago. I would like now to invite you, probably for a minute, to take a look at your own big idea. When you when you when you saw the title of this particular seminar, particularly the subtitle, and you decided to attend, what was your big idea? And try to compare it with the big idea that I have given the group a while ago. All right, we proceed with the next slide. So basically, I am inviting everyone to what we call an improvement in our pedagogy. It's an invitation to innovate. Of course, you can see the picture there. There's a second floor, and then in order for the students to exit the classroom, there's a slide, right? So it's a way of illustrating the importance of innovation. Because indeed, when we take the path of teacher leadership, it's an innovative pedagogy. It's your own innovative pedagogy because you realize that this is basically leaving behind your comfort zone. And that particular comfort zone is I am okay. I am doing well. I have been attending seminars. I have been trying to improve myself. I am getting good ratings. In fact, very, very good ratings, evaluation coming from my superior officer year in and year out for the past 3 years, for the past 5 years, right? But now I want to go beyond that individualism, that isolation, and I want to embrace collegiality. I want to share what I have to my colleagues because I know that I have something that I can share to them that will help them improve their practice. This is not only because, right? Because this is not only because of the fact that I crave for attention. This is not only because of the fact that I crave for, let us say, praises coming from my colleagues, but it goes beyond it. It goes beyond those items. Because in the end, I want to help them improve. And indeed, if we go beyond that particular comfort zone, it's our pedagogy. It's a chosen pedagogy. And it's innovative because now we are not only trying to understand how our students learn, but how our colleagues learn, how they think, right? How they understand certain policies, particularly related to improving their teaching in the school, and how to help them change and improve their practices. So the most important point is to go out of that isolation. to be able to contribute to the development of other people, particularly our teachers. So we see them as learners. And the biggest difference probably between our students and our co-teachers is that they're adult learners. They're adult learners. But I know that you are quite comfortable helping them learn, teaching them how to teach well, because you have the smell of practice, because you know teaching, and you are very close to the ground, as they call it, right? You are what we call, you have a proximity to what is important in the school because you're also a teacher. You're also a teacher, right? So this particular session then is an invitation for everyone to innovate, to take a look at another pedagogy. And that particular pedagogy is none other than andragogy, right? Teaching our colleagues how to improve their practice, beginning with improving the way they look at teaching, that they must see teaching every day, no matter how difficult it is, especially in the context of this particular pandemic, that we are using blended learning, we are using synchronous and asynchronous session, that no matter how difficult it is something worthwhile, right? Something that we need to put a lot of effort into in order to make the learning on the part of the student successful. So let me invite you now to think about some questions which you, at this particular point, you probably are thinking right now. So the inbox of Canvas is, you can type your questions there, and probably later when I have the chance, I'll take a look at some of the questions. So a minute. So let's take a look at the objectives. We have actually three. The first one is the most important objective. And most probably the entire 2 hours of the session will basically cover and uncover the first objective. But the other objectives are connected to the first objective. We have to take a look at what is teacher leadership, why is teacher leadership important, and how do we become teacher leaders. At the same time, we have to reflect on effective professional development strategies. And connected to the effective professional development strategies is, we will have to review the key role of the teacher leader in promoting learning through professional development or professional learning. Again, even if he is not in a position of authority. So let's take a look at the first one. Take a look at the first one. This is none other than appreciate the importance of teacher leadership. So the question now is, why is the teacher leader important? Even if he is not the principal, he does not actually plan. He does not actually participate in the planning. He is not actually involved in the budgeting of professional development sessions. He does not actually observe classes, right? He does not actually participate in the evaluation of the teacher. But our argument is, in order for a school to have a good professional development program, right, we cannot rely alone on the principal or the subject head. So let's move on. And in attending this session then, considering the objectives, particularly the number one, what are your objectives that should be aligned with the big idea that you were able to craft a while ago? And I hope we have an alignment between the objectives that I have for this particular module and your objectives. This is basically what we call visibility of teaching and learning. And we all know that the research literature or the research findings on effective teaching attest to the fact that this is important. Okay, the teacher is able to communicate his objectives to the students, and the students understand the objective. And in this particular point, then, I'm taking an opportunity to communicate my objectives at the same time for you to be able to reflect on your own objectives. And just like what I said a while ago, I hope we have an alignment of objectives. So let's take a look at the first one. The appreciate the importance of the teacher leader. Teacher leaders. All right. So it's just like a KWL. What do we know about teacher leadership? What do we know about teacher leaders? I would like to invite you again to recall, okay, to take a look at what you have written or to recall the names of the teacher leaders in your school. Not necessarily the principal or the subject head, but someone whom you admire, you look up to. And based on the qualities of this particular person, then we could infer what you know about teacher leaders. It's possible that you're thinking of yourself. And I think it's perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay. So what do I know about teacher leaders? Probably one or two ideas. If you want, you can write it down in the inbox of in the inbox of Zoom, in the message of in the inbox of Zoom. I was talking of Canvas a while ago because we use the platform of Canvas. Let me just check. Okay. All right. So we'll take those things into consideration. So let's begin with a definition of leadership. And here we focus on the word influence. We focus on the word influence. And we realize then that the gurus of leadership, the experts in leadership, do not actually talk about a position, do not actually talk about a person with a PhD or an EDD, or even probably with two doctoral degrees. They don't talk about a leader and then they equate leadership with, let us say, 30 years of teaching experience or 45 years of teaching experience. Or let us say, he has been the principal for the past 20 years, etc. Right? But when they talk about leadership, they talk about a key word, a key concept, and none other than influence. How do you motivate? How do you move people? It's just like, how do you influence your students to study their lessons? How do you influence your students to recite? How do you influence your students to participate actively in the group work, etc.? So, in the context of the teacher or teachers, how do you influence your colleague to adopt a certain teaching practice? And that particular practice has something to do, for example, with, let us say, improving the way he or she manages the class. So you talk about an influence. And the other important point about leadership is the word goal, because you influence them to move to a higher level, to a greater level. And when they move to a higher level, they achieve a certain set of goals. Whether those goals are personal goals, professional goals, as long as they are aligned to the goals of the organization or the goals of the school. Because there has to be standards. You don't only motivate, engage them, lead them, right? But you motivate, engage them, and lead them to achieve certain results. And those results are basically tied to, aligned to what we call the goals of the school. And here we realize then that, oo nga, no, it's not about the 30 years of teaching experience. It's not about having an EDD, a PhD degree, or an MA degree. Okay, it's not about someone who talks eloquently or is a principal or a vice principal or a subject head. But it's about a person who is able to influence other people to align their goals, to move, to do something about those goals in order for them to be able to contribute to the good of the school. So this is leadership. And in the session that I conducted for Catalyst, I facilitated a session, or I did talk about student engagement. And we all know that when we talk about school goals, we have to take a look at the mission and vision of the school, the ideal graduate. But when we take a look at the classroom, we are all familiar with the goal entire school of engaging the students, of improving the way the teachers motivate and engage their students. Remember, I don't know if some of you were able to attend that particular session, but we were talking about the requirements instead of requiring them, for example, to submit a homework, requiring them, for example, to participate in the discussion, or requiring them to do a performance task, etc. Rather than require, they desire it. They are intrinsically motivated because they know that their interests and their needs are included in those requirements. And they have a choice and even a voice in those requirements. So this is what we're talking about. We influence our colleagues in the context of the school because they are able to achieve certain goals that are considered important by the school. And in the context, we go down to the level where the rubber meets the road because this is important to the school. For example, to the goal of student engagement or other goals like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right? Especially something to do with character education like addressing bullying concerns or doing service learning projects. They learn, but at the same time, they serve the community. And even though because of the pandemic, many service learning projects in the school are quite limited, I'm sure that there are still a lot of schools who have done their best in order to help the students not only learn but also serve the community or promote values education. And of course, you have classroom management, you differentiate instruction because you have different kinds of learners, and therefore you create different doorways and pathways for them to be able to learn the content and to think on a higher level, or teaching specific knowledge and skills. And there are other important goals. But here, what we are trying to emphasize is that you can be a leader then. A teacher can be a leader then because it is not dependent on a position. It is not dependent on a degree. It is not dependent on the number of years, meaning to say a 3-year teaching veteran, okay, a teacher with 3 years of teaching experience is very much capable of becoming a teacher leader. All right? Because it has something to do with influence. Because we are competent, because we are good, because we are respected, right? And because we are approachable, right? Because we have this particular intention to help other teachers improve. And we do want to make a difference in the quality of their teaching, then we can become a leader. Then we can become a leader. So, because here, the when we go back to the word influence then, and the examples that I have given here, this is what we call the core work in schools. This is where the rubber meets the road. We talk about the mission, we talk about the vision. When we go back to our schools, we see the mission and the vision in the corridor. Probably we have memorized the mission and the vision. We're very familiar with the description of the ideal graduate, the core values, etc. And all of these very important ideas must be, could be clearly seen in the classroom, in the laboratory room, in the playing field where you conduct your PE classes, even in the corridor, or, for example, in the cafeteria, or even in the faculty room. For example, when a student goes to the faculty room, knocks at the door, and then the teacher and the student will have a conference. And they will use one of the conference rooms in the faculty room, inside the faculty room, right? So we realize that all of those things that I have mentioned, and I'm sure you can come up with many more examples, this is the core work in schools. And who is responsible, directly responsible for the core work in schools? The teacher. The teacher. The teacher who has 5 subjects, the teacher who has, I don't know, maybe 250 students, 50 students per class, the teacher probably who has 5 different preparations, or the teacher who teaches in multi-grade levels, probably handling grade 5, grade 4, grade 3, etc. And we realize then that when we talk about the teacher, oo nga no, the teacher is a leader. The teacher is a leader, primarily because of the fact that number one, we talk about influence. And if you are a good teacher and if you want to go beyond your own classroom, then you can be a good teacher. You can be a leader. And as important as the influence is the fact that what the teacher does in the school is actually the core work in schools. The teaching and learning, learning the content, teaching and learning the content, teaching and learning how to think, teaching and learning values, teaching and learning virtues. This is the core work in schools. So therefore, I am a leader. I can be a leader. I realize I can be a leader. All right? So teacher leadership then, we would like to highlight again the word influence. It refers to teachers who lead within, right? Because they're good teachers. The students look up to this particular teacher because he teaches well, because he comes to class 3 minutes before the start of the class, or on time, because this particular teacher checks the quizzes and then returns the quizzes after a day, or checks a long test and returns the long test after a week, or this particular teacher asks good questions. If the student could not answer, right, he would ask a follow-up or a follow-through question, etc. within. But that particular teacher goes beyond his own classroom. Okay? Even though probably it's quite scary, even though probably it takes a lot of courage, that particular teacher, he knows that he can contribute to the good of other people, he goes beyond his classroom, beyond the classroom, because he identifies not only with his own success as a teacher, but with the success of his colleagues and the entire school in teaching their students. So he is concerned with my learning, with his learning. He is concerned with the learning of the other teachers, his colleagues, and with the learning of the students, but not only his students. So, teacher leadership. And here, in the second one, we have to also highlight the word he accepted that particular responsibility. Because definitely, right, it is not an expectation as if you're going to be evaluated because of that particular point or points that we have discussed. It is something out of the free will of a teacher to say that I can help, I have decided to help. All right. So this is teacher leadership. So it's not a position in authority, or it's not determined by going to graduate school and earning a doctoral degree, although that's important. Going to graduate school and earning a master's degree, although that's important. We are not saying it is not important. It's not about, again, the number of years of teaching, because it's possible for a teacher to become a leader even if, let us say, he has been teaching for only 5 years. But we're talking about a person in authority, a person in authority, an effective teacher, an enthusiastic teacher, a caring teacher, a good teacher, a respected professional. So we go back to the invitation a while ago that this is my innovative pedagogy. I have to think about ending my own isolation. I have to start thinking about my own colleagues, not only about my own professional development or the learning and development of my own students in social studies grade 7 or math grade 5, but the learning and development of my colleagues, my co-teachers, especially those whom I literally meet every day because they belong to the same subject area, they belong to the same grade level, or they belong to the same school unit, right? It's the person in authority because we talk about influence. And if you're a person in authority, people look up to you, people listen to you, people seek you for your advice, right? Even though you're not the principal, even though you don't have a degree, a higher education degree, then you are a leader, a person in authority, a teacher leader. So in the real world, number one, two, three, four, these are the good teachers in the way they manage their class, in the way they plan their lesson, in the way they engage their students. They have the respect of the entire school community precisely because they're good teachers. And then they don't actually occupy a formal position of authority. But what distinguishes them, aside from being good teachers, is they have taken the responsibility to serve and lead other teachers. So think about it. Think about it. Do I have a colleague who fits this particular description? Someone whom I could probably look up to? Is this particular idea of teacher leadership, is it something that I want to be probably 3 years from now, 5 years from now, or starting next week when we will have our own professional development session? Is this something that I want? Because in my school, I don't really want to become a principal. I don't really want to become a subject head. I want to stay in the classroom. I want to stay in the trenches, quote unquote, in the thick of the fight. I want to be with the students. But is it possible for me to also contribute to the professional development of my colleagues, even if I am not in a position of authority? I think the verdict, especially when we're talking about the research connecting connecting professional development and teacher leadership, I think the verdict is quite clear. Okay? Teacher leadership is important, and we can be a teacher leader. We can be a teacher leader. I would like now to invite you to spend a minute or two to update your colleague. Probably send him a text message, or colleague send him a text message in maybe a short paragraph. What is teacher leadership? And more importantly, an important question, a follow-up question, why are teacher leaders important? Why are teacher leaders important? All right. I would like to give everyone a break because I know we all deserve a break. Let's have a 5-minute break. Let's resume the session at 4:06 in the afternoon. I think it's 4:01. All right. So I'll see you again after the break.
Meal. Tapos yung fries, i-upgrade to large. At yung soft drink to pineapple juice. Tapos yung nameplate mo, tabingi.
Okay, you ordered
Kulang
for...
yung ngiti mo. Dagdagan mo. Kailangan, pati ang mga mata mo, nakasmile.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Can I take your order?
Bigyan mo ko ng burger steak meal.
Ma'am, would you like to try our peach mango pie to go with your meal?
Mango, iha. Hindi mango. Ulitin mo.
Would you like to try our peach mango pie po?
Better. But no thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay. Okay. Will that be all, sir? Here's your order, ma'am. Enjoy your meal. Thank you po. Mauna na ako ah. Ano po, Lola?
Apo, pagbutihan mong trabaho mo, ha? Kung kinakailangan na nandun ako parati, hanggat kaya ko, susuportahan kita hanggang maging manager ka.
We're going to begin again in a couple of minutes. All right, so I hope you're in your proper place right now, in your proper places right now. So we will begin again. This is the second part of the module on teaching as leadership. So let's now take a look at the 5 key tasks of teacher leaders. Number one, two, three, four, and five. So there are five. So you have monitoring, defining, leading, and then action research. And in order for us to be able to fully understand and and appreciate the work of the teacher leader, we will focus on the middle, the one in the middle, none other than mentoring other teachers. Because when we talk about the key roles of the teacher based on the what research literature is telling us, we can probably think of five. So you have here the team leader, the training facilitator, the demonstration teacher, the instructional coach, which is related to also the idea of the mentor. The idea of the mentor. And I suppose if you have been attending the sessions given by Mr. Rentoy, you must have heard about mentoring several times or probably even many times. And this is the reason why also I did focus on mentoring in order for us to be able to really appreciate the work of the teacher leader. Because when we talk about mentoring, right, you in a conversation, in a demonstration, in an exchange of notes, etc., you make a big contribution to the development of the person who listens to you, who learns from you. So we take a look at mentoring. So the specific example of mentoring, particularly probably focusing on new teachers, especially during their induction period, during the time when they're seeking permanency. But of course, even the veteran teachers, the 20-year veteran, the 25-year veteran, even the challenging teachers, the difficult teachers, in fact, they need the mentoring session. Perhaps they need it more. All right. So a specific example in mentoring. And imagine the impact on the new teachers when they are mentored. So let's revisit the definition of mentoring. So when you talk about mentoring, you talk about a less experienced professional, probably, well, a clear example is a new teacher, new to the profession, a fresh graduate, or probably he or she has been teaching for a year or 2 years, or we can even probably argue that a 3-year teacher or even a 5-year teacher, a 5-year veteran teacher is still a new teacher, right? So this is a process. It's basically a conversation about teaching, a conversation about the curriculum, a conversation about learning, a conversation about what matters most in education, right? Including vocation, including the profession, including the need to understand the mission and vision of the school, the context, the families who send their children to the school, etc. So it's an exchange of notes between a veteran teacher and a less experienced teacher. But perhaps when we talk about a better definition of mentoring and therefore a complete definition of mentoring, we have to take a look at this particular definition. And again, we find the word influence. We find the word influence. And specifically in the context of the school, whether you are teaching in a public school, a private school, or a Catholic school, etc., that particular conversation, exchange of notes, exchange of ideas, and the veteran teacher, the more veteran teacher, the mentor influencing the mentee or the less experienced teacher, it has to focus on teaching and learning, two sides of the same coin. Because we all know that the measure of a good teacher, the measure of effective teaching is none other than if the students have learned. And therefore, we have to be concerned with evaluation. We have to be concerned with grading. And more important than evaluation and grading are key points like feedback, assessment for learning, assessment as learning, student reflection, etc. Right? Because when we talk about mentoring in schools, that particular aim of mentoring is none other than increasing, improving, right? Focusing on the learning and development of the educand, the learning and development of the pupil. That is the point. That is the focus of mentoring. And when we take a look at that particular point, then it is the heart of what we do. It is the heart of what we do as teachers. So take a look at the example of student engagement. How do we gain and maintain the attention of the students? How do we make them pay attention to something that they need to pay attention to? And then, of course, we have to ask the question, okay, how do we make ourselves give importance to making the students pay attention to what they need to pay attention to? Because many times when we plan our lesson, sometimes we relegate to the background the idea of catching and maintaining the attention of the students. We are concerned with the content. We are concerned with the teaching method. So for example, we're using collaborative learning, etc. So this particular example illustrates the importance of mentoring. And because we again saw the point regarding the influence, number two, regarding the learning on the part of the teacher, number three, the focus on teaching and learning, and number four, consequently, we have to see an improvement in the learning of the student, then mentoring could be done by a teacher leader. Mentoring could be done by the teacher leader, right? Because especially because of the fact that the teacher leader is very close proximity, very close to what matters most in the school. He is a teacher herself or himself. He has a full load of subjects. So for example, 5 subjects, or considering that we are in the pandemic, maybe 4 subjects or even 3 subjects. Right? People listen to him, teachers listen to him, teachers ask questions about teaching and learning, and they're confident that they will be able to receive a good answer because this particular teacher whom they are talking to is a good teacher. He's someone who has fresh ideas because every day he is down there in the classroom, whether that particular classroom is the brick and mortar classroom or that particular classroom is a classroom that we are using right now, the Google Meet or the Zoom or Canvas, etc. So, or right, they talk about teacher intensity and enthusiasm, something again that is very close to our heart. So this is Robert Marzano, and he distinguishes between intensity and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm has something to do with, is the content, the lesson, meaningful to the student? Is it something that they can connect with? The textbook that you are using, the handout that you are using, the content that you're trying to communicate with them, is it something that they are enthusiastic about? Because there there is something in that content that they can connect with their experience, with their interests. And of course, intensity has something to do with convincing the student that this particular content is important, communicating the importance of the content, etc. Right? So we realize then that when we talk about the teacher, right, if he or she volunteers, or even if, let us say, there is no mentoring program in the school, because in some schools there's a mentoring program, right? Even if there's no mentoring program, it is still possible for you as a teacher leader to mentor other teachers. And most probably or naturally, they will come to you naturally because you are a good teacher. And because they come to you naturally, why not prepare yourself for this particular responsibility, quote unquote, that you have to be open to it. And in fact, probably accountable to it because you will have to spend time. You will have to spend, you'll have to put in a lot of effort trying to understand the questions, the ideas, okay, raised by your colleagues, that when you talk to them, they're seeking an answer. And therefore, you have to study these questions, these ideas, in order for you to be able to give them a good answer, right? So, what does it clearly show when teachers mentor other teachers? This one, okay? So remember, I brought up the word accountability a while ago. That even though I am not the principal, because the principal mentors the other teachers, the subject head mentors the other teachers, I can also mentor the other teachers. If there's a formal mentoring program, I can volunteer or I can communicate my availability. If there's no formal mentoring program, I can open the doors of my classroom to the other teachers. I can open my lesson plan and allow them to copy, meaning to say, they will steal your ideas, quote unquote. Because, right, my sense of responsibility goes beyond the traditionally reserved areas for school officers. I don't need to be an officer to make a difference in my school. All right. So we can clearly see here that the research literature tells us that one of the key tasks of the teacher leader is a mentor. With the examples that we have given by diving deeply into mentoring, we have explained the importance of mentoring and not only the importance of the fact that even if you are not an officer, you are not the principal, the subject head. As long as you are a person in authority, it's possible to mentor other teachers. It's possible to mentor other teachers. Is it possible for a 15-year veteran or a 10-year veteran to mentor a 20-year veteran, a 25-year veteran? I think it is possible. I have seen it accomplished by younger teachers mentoring older teachers. Because when we talk about education, when we talk about teaching and learning, there are so many areas. Meaning to say, right, we are good in certain areas. It can be that we are very good classroom managers. We are very good class advisors. We understand the content deeply, right? And therefore, we have something that we can share to our colleagues. That even if, let us say, we have a lesser number of teaching experience, it's possible that our colleagues who have more teaching years tucked under their belt will learn a lot from us because we have a deeper understanding of a certain area. But this is important. You accept that particular responsibility. You are accountable. So even though I'm not going to be evaluated, even though I'm not going to be paid, quote unquote, etc., right? Even though I'm not expected to by the school formal expectation, okay, I place it onto myself that I have to be accountable for mentoring other teachers. I open my door, okay, the door of my classroom for them to observe. I open my lesson plan for them to copy ideas. I allot certain minutes for them. Okay, during the day, an 8-hour day, probably I carve out of the 8-hour day a 30-minute consultation with another teacher, etc. So this is what we mean by mentoring. And indeed, when we take a look at that particular key task, you can fulfill your role, quote unquote, as a teacher leader by mentoring other teachers. Right. So take some time, okay? Probably a minute or two in a 2-minute message. You can probably type it and send it to your principal or probably a colleague, okay? Come up with a compelling argument, and to support it, probably with examples, convincing details or examples. Why do we need teacher leaders who will act as mentors in your school? And I don't know, maybe looking at your own self, okay? Why should I be a mentor? Why should I mentor? My first initial giant step in order for me to become a teacher leader is to become a mentor, a teacher mentor. Okay, different from tormentor. Okay, a teacher mentor. Something to think about. If I am a 5-year teaching veteran, a 10-year teaching veteran, I have not mentored before, why not begin with the new teachers? Beginning with establishing a good relationship with them, because rapport is very important. Next, so teacher leadership is basically understanding who we are. So we're now going to take a deeper dive into teacher leadership. And we will again take a look at the implications from the definition regarding the influence, regarding the focus on professional development and the focus on teacher learning. And we're now going to take a look at collegiality, right? Collegiality. Because when you say, okay, I know that I can influence other people to improve. I am a good teacher, and I know that when I talk, people listen to me. I know that when I exchange notes with another teacher, right, that particular teacher tries his or her best to think about how to implement some of those ideas, and then he or she comes back and we discuss again the implications of using those ideas, probably a new teaching method, probably a new technology, a new platform, etc. So therefore, when we talk about that particular point of view regarding the teacher leader as someone who is able to influence his colleagues, then we have to emphasize the point that that particular teacher is going beyond isolation, going beyond his isolation, going beyond his or her own classroom. And therefore, we talk about collaboration, we talk about community, we talk about collegiality, right? We talk about collegiality, community, collaboration, collegiality. Because the other aspect of teacher leadership is you're not only contributing to the development of the other teachers, but you're also assuming a leadership function that will help the school leadership, the principal, those who are in a formal position of authority, the department head, the subject head, to be able to help them lead the other teachers achieve the goals of the school. That's the other point. That even though I'm not a part, for example, of the academic council, of the principal's council, of the group of subject heads, I know that when I become a teacher leader and I seriously consider this idea of teacher leadership, I am building collaboration. I am building community. And I participate in what we call a collegial type of leadership. collegiality, right? So let's take a look at that further, okay? Because when we talk about collegiality, then this is something that we need to emphasize now for the teacher leader. It's a concern for the entire school rather than just a concern for the classroom. And if you take a look at the second part of this particular idea, you will realize that that particular collegiality, when you participate in the leadership functions of the school, even though you are not a someone who is a principal, a position in authority, you that collegiality, that collaboration, that community contributes to a strong culture, right? The beliefs and values of the members of the community. And that particular community is composed of your own school, the stakeholders, the teachers, the parents, the students. This is how we do things around here, right? That this particular school is not only led by the principal, right? The subject head. The program is not only owned by the principal, by the subject head, but the ownership, right, is not limited to the officers, but that particular ownership is basically owned by the entire school. If there's a strategic plan, if there's an action plan, okay, we have identified three important things that we need to improve on for this coming school year. Okay, number one, we need to improve. We have to make sure that the students, okay, who are failing are the numbers are reduced, that they are given help, that there are certain good intervention strategies. Or for example, number two, that the number of students who are disciplined will become less. And number three, etc. So it is not only the principals, the subject heads, the vice principals who own these programs, but the entire community, all of the teachers, particularly because you have good teachers who collaborate with the principals, with the subject heads, in order for this to be realized. So it's about the culture of the school. Collaboration, community, cooperation is just something to do with the culture of the entire school. So I repeat it again. Who are the teacher leaders in my school? Who are the good teachers? Competent, approachable, they have an influence. More importantly, right, they take on that particular responsibility. I can clearly see them that they cooperate, collaborate with the principals, with the subject heads. They own the program. They demonstrate how they own the program with their good action, right? Okay. Who are these teacher leaders in my school? Think about it again and take a look at your list, because we realize then that when we talk about collegiality, collaboration, community, the teacher leader is not only someone who is a mentor, but a culture builder. But a culture builder. So in a word, they're catalysts. Who are these catalysts? A teacher whose talk, enthusiasm, or energy causes other teachers to be more friendly, enthusiastic, or energetic. Diba? It's just like saying that when the teacher enters the classroom, the textbook is important, but more important than the textbook is the teacher. The curriculum is important, but the most important curriculum is the teacher. Okay? We are a good example, not only a good example to teachers. They see us teach properly, right? They see us plan our lessons effectively and efficiently. They see us attend professional development sessions, and they appreciate that particular stance on our part to develop ourselves. And as important as those actions is none other than they see us as someone who helps them become as good as you are. Okay? Become as good as you are. So a catalyst, a culture builder, a culture builder. So let us go back to the key tasks: school improvement, outcomes, mentoring, leading, research, etc. And let's take a look at it from two important perspectives, these key tasks. Okay, these key tasks. Because a while ago we were talking about mentoring. Now, we will take a look at all of these key tasks because we said a while ago when we talk about the teacher leader is focused on improving the school, particularly the quality of teaching and learning. That's why you have their student outcomes, mentoring, leading other teachers, and then a while ago, action research, which I hope later on we'll be able to reach that particular slide on action research. So let's take a look at the key tasks, from two general perspectives. The first one is the perspective of the entire school. And the teacher leadership model is a winning model. Why? Because just like what I said, you talk about the catalyst, you talk about the culture builder, and take a look at the extreme dictator, number two, number three, number four. We want this particular culture in our school, a collaborative culture. In fact, if it is not too much to ask, too much to aim for, we are hoping that all teachers in the school are teacher leaders. Because that is what we need, beginning with the fact that all teachers must be good teachers, right? Okay. Empowered, engaged, they have ownership, working with the people in authority, the person, okay, the people in authority, in order for them to be able to achieve the goals of the school. So this is another important point. What about from the individual teacher's perspective? Because that's a whole perspective, especially with the culture of the school. Now, if we take a look at the perspective of the individual teacher, we realize then that when you talk about collegiality, right? Collegiality means, okay, I talk to a colleague and we are equal. This particular colleague of mine, when I observe his class, right? When I take a look at his lesson plan, when I give ideas on how to improve the lesson, the sequence probably, the scaffolding of the activities probably, etc., right? I have a better chance of convincing him, of making him listen to me, right? Because we are colleagues. It's a collegial conversation. He does not look at me as someone who holds the pen, a red pen of evaluation. And he knows that when he talks to me or I talks to him because you're the teacher leader, I'm not only looking at his weaknesses, but in fact, I do an appreciative inquiry, right? I do an appreciative inquiry. Okay? I take a look at how to improve this particular teacher from the perspective of someone who is a colleague, someone who is not there to evaluate him probably at the end of the quarter, probably at the end of the semester, probably at the end of the year. That's why when you take a look at the individual teacher's perspective, the ideas coming from the teacher leader, whether those ideas come in the form of mentoring or in this particular case, coaching, okay, you ask a teacher, a co-teacher to observe your classes because you respect that particular teacher. And since that particular teacher is open to the idea of helping you improve, even though he does not consider himself as a teacher leader, in fact, maybe he's not aware of the concept or the idea of a teacher leader, but he goes inside the classroom, observes the class, and gives inputs on how to improve your class, etc. Okay, you look at it You look at that particular points of improvement as something that is basically an appreciative inquiry. It is a point for improvement. All right. And here, because the teacher leader is someone who has spent or continues to spend his time teaching, he can facilitate that particular change, I think, more effectively compared, for example, to a department head or a principal. Okay, because of course we said number one, because he's teaching, he's very close to the ground, he has a smell of practice. Number two, because the teacher whom he is talking to is open to the ideas coming from the teacher, and not only that, okay, he's open to admit the points that he or she needs to improve, because he knows he or she is talking to someone who will not evaluate him or her. But I think more importantly, if we understand teacher change, because this is very important, right? If we're going to improve the teacher, we have to understand how teachers think and how teachers change. And here, it's not only about the changing to, according to research, but the biggest challenge really is changing from. Changing from. And the teacher leader knows very well the changing from. Why? Because he's a good teacher. He's a competent teacher. Why? Because he continues to encounter the same issues, the same problems day in and day out when he plans the lessons, when he teaches inside the classroom, when he reflects on his teaching or her teaching. He has been there before and he continues to be there present. He continues to teach. He continues to encounter the dilemmas, the difficulties, the issues of how to become a good teacher. Yeah. That's why from the individual teacher's perspective, right, I have someone here whom I could talk to, listen to, learn from. And this particular teacher, okay, is someone who knows what he or she is talking about. And more importantly, okay, he has been there before. He has experienced it, or he continues to experience the same questions, the same dilemmas that I'm trying to address. Whether those dilemmas or those questions that you're trying to address has something to do with addressing the classroom management problems of dealing with difficult students, those who talk out of turn, or those students probably who are having difficulties in writing, or those probably who have difficulty in terms of understanding ideas in a primary source document if you're teaching social studies. So it's not only the changing to, but the changing from. And the teacher leader has a very big advantage because most of the time, if not all of the time, if not all of the years that he has spent in school, he has spent it teaching and understanding learning. So we're talking about the instructional coach. And these are powerful questions. And these powerful questions could be answered by someone who knows what is it what is it like to be a good teacher, or what is effective teaching, what effective teaching is all about. How do I create a powerful learning environment? How do I scaffold the learning activities in order to reduce the load on the memory on the part of the students? How do I promote collaboration among students? He has been there before. He has experienced it. And more importantly, he continues to experience it. And when he talks about improvement, right, He's looking at the teacher whom he is talking to, probably mentoring, probably coaching, and all you want is none other than for that particular teacher to improve. So I don't know if you were able to attend the session that was facilitated or given by Mr. Rintoy. Just think about effective online teaching and learning. So because this is basically our medium, online and distance learning for the coming school year, probably until December. I don't know, maybe until hopefully not throughout the entire school year of 2021-2022 we'll be using online teaching and learning. But just imagine if you could benefit from someone, okay, a teacher, a very good teacher in your school, a teacher leader who can guide you about effective online teaching and learning, whom you could consult, whom you could con you're confident with, that you could admit your faults, you could admit your weaknesses without that particular person, quote unquote, taking it against you, right? Okay, so let's do a triple jump. I would like to invite everyone to do a triple jump. This is fairly more difficult compared to the other activities a while ago. Okay, so I think this particular question was, I'm not quite sure if I saw it in the chat box, in the inbox. How do we convince the good teachers to come out of their isolation? Because this is a crucial question. It's just like asking the question, how do we convince you to come out of your own isolation? So far more difficult question. That's why it's a triple jump. And we all know that in watching the Olympics or athletics, this is fairly difficult, probably more difficult than the 100-meter dash. How do I convince myself to come out of my own isolation in order to become a teacher leader? I was hesitant to post that particular question. That's why I rephrase it or reframe it in such a way that how do I convince the good teachers in my school? But I think right now it is important to ask that particular question. How do I convince myself to come out of my own isolation in order to become a teacher leader? Because I know I'm a good teacher. Or if we are not yet confident, how can I become a good teacher leader? And probably 5 years from now, 3 years from now, from today, I could come out of my own isolation. All right, so let's take a look at. So we will now take a look at some preliminary ideas about professional development, especially this is timely because I think we'll not be able to reach the second objective. But here are some preliminary ideas about teacher professional development. And of course, we're going to relate them with the teacher leader or teacher leadership. There are several key areas of teacher leadership, and I would like to focus on two, which has a direct alignment or relationship with teacher professional development. In the literature, and remember when we talk about the literature, the research literature, this is based on what happened on the ground. This is based on experts going to different schools and then observing good teachers. And then when they observe these good teachers, this is the reason also why they came up with the idea of the teacher leader. Because There is what we call a special kind of good teacher who is the teacher leader. And they they were able to unearth two important ideas of teacher leadership that are connected with professional development. The first one is what we call a leadership that is focused on professional learning. And the second one is a leadership which is basically focused on curriculum and instruction. So professional learning leadership and then instructional leadership. And these are important. These are important because, okay, remember our second objective. How do I lead the teachers in professional development activities even if I am not the subject head? Even if I am not the vice principal or the principal, I am not in a position of authority, but I am a person of authority, right? Okay. So the answer now is professional learning leadership and instructional leadership. Let's explore them. So when we talk about professional learning leadership, we have to take a look at, when we talk about professional learning leadership, when we talk about instructional leadership, one thing that unites the two is what we call the facilitation. Facilitation is another word for influence, right? But how do you see the influence of the teacher leader? You can clearly see the influence of the teacher leader when you see that he is a good facilitator. Number one, the questions, right? Number two, he gives comments that provides an opportunity or opportunities for teachers to think or rethink their teaching practices. Number three, he has the knack of leading a group discussion. He has the confidence of leading a group discussion. He has the competence of leading a group discussion because he has a good knowledge of the subject matter content. Whether that subject matter content has something to do with curriculum content or pedagogical content. So therefore, when we talk about professional learning leadership and we talk about instructional leadership, those key tasks related to professional development, we go back to the word influence. The teacher leader is an influential teacher. And clearly, we can see the influence with the way that particular teacher facilitates the professional development of his or her own colleagues. He asks good questions. He asks very good follow-up questions. He gives notes, ideas, and comments that would make us think on a higher level, that would allow us to rethink our teaching practices. He leads the discussion in such a way that the central issues are addressed, etc. All right? So, with that particular facilitation skill, with that idea of the teacher leader as a facilitator, we go back then to number one, instructional leadership. When we talk about the professional development of the teacher, the best type of professional development is the one that is led by a learning-centered leader. What does that mean? Right? The professional development, it not only seeks the improvement of the teachers in their teaching, but it must have an impact on the learning of the students. And therefore, we have to go back to the classroom because the professional development of the teachers is normally done in, I don't know, in the auditorium or in the context of online teaching and learning, online and distance learning here in Zoom, right? Or it occurs in a formal professional development session like, okay, let us say a lecture, a seminar, a workshop, etc. But the best type of professional development is something wherein that particular seminar is connected to the classroom. Okay, how does it look like in the real world? The topic of the seminar is the concern of the teachers, right? So let us say, okay, it has something to do with the reading strategies. But what are those reading strategies? They cannot just be generic strategies. They should be strategies that are based on data, based on the experience of the teachers, based on what worked and did not work in their classes from last year. Number two, how does it look like that particular professional development, right? That when they are able to understand, for example, those reading strategies, that they have an essential agreement when, how, and where to implement them. When, how, and where to implement them. It does not stay in the file folder. So for example, you take down notes and then you file it in a folder in your computer. But rather, after the seminar, after the session, teachers talk about them. Teachers talk about these ideas. And they come up with an essential agreement on how to implement them. And the best person who can facilitate these discussions is not necessarily the principal or the subject head, but someone who can talk to his colleagues, collegiality, just like a colleague, okay? They are on the same level. They are teachers. They experience the same kind of teaching and learning every day, right? They have the smell of practice. They're in the trenches, quote unquote, etc. And if you think about it, even the research literature is very clear. The the most important factor in the learning of the teachers, more important than the principal, is the effect, the impact of that particular person is felt more, it has more impact than the principal, and that particular person is none other than a fellow teacher. That's why if you take a look at the research literature, they're talking about distributed leadership. It cannot be a leadership, whether that particular leadership is instructional leadership, in the hands of the principal alone. It should be distributed, especially to those teachers who are competent enough to lead their colleagues. All right? So you can clearly see now the alignment between what is the best type of professional development and how do this how does this look like in the real world? Okay? And who best facilitates that particular kind of professional development? None other than a good teacher, a competent one, an approachable one. None other than someone who is down there day in and day out, thinking about experiencing those issues, those problems, those dilemmas. All right? So learning centered leaders. Okay? So here we're talking about what is that worthy learning environment. The worthy learning environment, not only for the students, but also for the teachers. And very important then, will skip this one. Okay. If you take a look at these 2 points, here are descriptions of that particular, here are descriptions from teachers of teacher leaders. Willing to do anything for other teachers. Everything is based on a real sense of caring and concern for the well-being of the teachers, the staff, okay, and the students. And therefore, another idea then that we have to highlight regarding the teacher leader is the fact that that particular leader does not only have the respect of his colleagues, he's not only approachable because he empathizes with his fellow teachers, he places importance on relationships, okay, collegiality. But I think more importantly, because he is a caring teacher, he promotes the best interests of people. he promotes the best interests of the other teachers. And we go back to the challenge a while ago. Okay, how can I become a teacher leader? Because when I am a teacher leader, I am a good teacher. I am a caring teacher. I have influence over my colleagues. I practice collegiality. And as important as these items, I push the envelope. I contribute in the development, okay, of the students. Because remember, the learning and the development of the students is basically the most important goal of the school, right? So I would like to stop here and I would like to turn over the floor to Mr. Rintoy. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Grillo. Let me see. I'll just turn on the light for a while. Okay, uh, great. You can hear me. Thank you very much, um, everyone, for joining us in this afternoon session. And as we have always done the past days, you can request for your certificate by emailing your full name and the title of the seminar. Um, Sorry, did I get to share the screen? Yeah. Yeah, you can request for your mm, certificate by sending an email here. And then you can also request for a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that was used today by sending an email to catalystpds@gmail.com. Thank you very much, Dr. Grillo. That's a great session we've had today. And you're going to see him again next week when he talks about passion and purpose. Great. So I would like to invite everyone, if you're okay, to turn on your video so that we can take a screenshot of the participants we had today in this Saturday session. I know it's more tough, more difficult, more demanding for you, teachers, to join us because Saturday, that's when we are supposed to take advantage of the weekend to rest a bit. But you're here and we appreciate it very much. So for that, we thank you very much. Okay, well, that brings to an end our session today. Once again, thank you for joining us. And the recording of this session will also be available upon request. You will have to send the request to catalystpds@gmail.com. Dr. Grillo, if they want to ask questions that they could not ask today, would you like to share your email address?
Yeah, my email address is ernie.grio, Grio, at uamp.asia.
At uap.asia.
Asia.
Okay.
uap.asia, sorry. Okay, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much again, everyone. Stay safe. Hope to see you again in our future seminars. We're going to resume on Monday. There's none tomorrow. um, I think we're going to cover class advisory, better classroom management, um, grit, resilience, and empathy. And then the last one with Dr. Grillo again on Thursday, the passion and purpose in teaching. So thank you. We will end this meeting in 5, 4. God bless everyone. Stay safe. 3, 2. See you in our future sessions. Bye.